national tragedy, and the administration is treating it as such. We know the National Weather Service provided early and consistent warnings. They gave out timely flash flood alerts. There were record-breaking lead times in the lead up to this catastrophe. There is ongoing flood monitoring, and these offices were well staffed. In fact, one of the offices was actually overstaffed. They had more people than they need. So any claim to the contrary is completely false, and it's just sad that people are pushing these lies.
That was White House Press Secretary earlier today in the White House press briefing, Caroline Leavitt, pushing back on narratives perpetuated in the corporate media related to the Trump administration, particularly President Trump's response to the Texas flooding, while announcing a forthcoming trip to Texas that the president will take. Caroline Leavitt said that the president signed an emergency disaster declaration within hours of the crisis. She also said that the president deployed the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, to the ground, while she did say again that the president will personally visit the hardest hit areas later this week. Leavitt also saying that now is a time for unity, not partisan lies. It's very different from the response we saw to Hurricane Helene by the previous Biden administration. In fact, recovery efforts continue as we speak. They're in full force in Kerr County, Texas. The DPS there announcing that along with their partners from several agencies that includes DPW, they're coming through debris and damage. Also, as we saw in Western North Carolina, many citizen volunteers are taking to Texas to help with the effort. One such hero is Gary Haven. Gary and his wife, Diane, flew search and rescue missions with their helicopter in the mountains of North Carolina in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, and they're doing the same right now in Texas. And we're so pleased that Gary took the time away to join us now to give us a firsthand view of what he's seeing in Texas and how that is different from the response he saw in Western North Carolina. It's good to see you, Gary. What is your initial takeaways or your initial reaction to the response that you're actually a part of now in Texas?
Hi, I'm glad to be here to share this with you. We've had a very interesting last couple of days. This event in Texas was a once in 100-year event. And of course, it happened at 4 o'clock in the morning, where the Guadalupe River went from 3 feet to 29 feet in 45 minutes while everyone was asleep. That was the nature of it. On the 4th of July, you have thousands of people that are down on the riverbank in campers and tents. So they were the most vulnerable. It was the worst time of day. And there really wasn't any way to prevent it, in my opinion. And you know, I hate to say it this way, but stuff happens. Now, it's my great privilege. I work with a volunteer organization called OperationHelo.org, and they organize private pilots like me to come to disasters like this. For example, down in Kerrville, the government is handling it with 11 helicopters to cover 50 miles. They need 100 helicopters there. But we weren't invited, so we went to the second hardest hit area, which is Marble Falls, Texas. These are pictures of me flying over this disaster. We didn't have near the number of people that were missing, but we did have a significant number. So we spent the last 2 days looking to hopefully find them alive. That picture there is the Jeep of the fire chief. You can barely see that it's a Jeep. I personally dropped National Guard with shovels and picks, and it took them half the day to get to the cab to verify that he was not in it. Here I'm dropping off volunteers. In fact, I believe these fire department, and they're about to go to the banks and work through the debris on about a 10-mile stretch. It is brutal work. But it's the only way it can be done. And helicopters were the only way to get the people there because all the bridges have been washed out.
Well, it's what we saw in North Carolina. Now, I remember initially in Western North Carolina, there was a shortage of helicopters because the government wasn't responding. Is that, or correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, that was the issue. So you had people like your group step in the gap and conduct those missions. How different is that to what you're seeing regarding the government response in Texas?
It's considerably different. Now, I have one complaint. This Operation Hilo is available to send 50, 100 helicopters, people like me,
Wow.
to Kerr County, which is where they're needed. But because there's 11 military helicopters operating, they won't let us in the area. That's foolish. It's bureaucratic. But having said that, Trump has been all over this. He sent Kristi Noem there immediately. There's been no bureaucratic and bottlenecks of any resources. He's done a really good job. And if you compare that to the Biden response, we had 100 helicopters in North Carolina. We had a hangar full of food that just kept filling up, water, food, medicine. And we had an ops center, so everybody knew where to go and what to do. And we were the only lifeline because all the roads in the mountains of North Carolina had been washed out. So anybody that had a medical condition like dialysis, we were able to get them and bring them back in an orderly fashion. Elon Musk donated Starlinks. We were putting them in all the fire stations that were isolated so communities had communication. It was a thing of beauty until FEMA showed up late in the week. The first thing they did, they confiscated the Starlinks and decided they were going to divvy them out. They confiscated the food that was donated by private citizens and decided they were going to divvy that out. And the reason was they had no resources, so they claimed ours so that they could look like they were doing something. So you have a complete 180-degree response from the Biden administration and their response to disaster and the Trump administration. And I'm not surprised that Trump, as an entrepreneur, would understand how to get things done.
I'm so glad to hear that there's a completely different expediency in the response from the current government, because I have many friends and family in the Western North Carolina region, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, it felt daunting to know that people were there in need of help, and not only were they not able to get it, but that the federal government was actively putting barriers in place to try to stop them from getting help from the volunteers. And we were talking to the many volunteers on the ground. I mean, regular people were just trying to figure out how to get resources in to help these people. I would have neighbors asking me how to help the people there because they knew I knew people there, and I knew people who could get, trailers in their campers. And it was a completely different situation. So I'm glad to hear this. So where does that put us now, Gary, in the recovery effort? Are we still in rescue? Are there still people out there needing to be rescued? Or are we now just recovery? And how quickly are we going to get to rebuild from this disaster?
Unfortunately, at this point, it would be a miracle if it was a rescue. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a believer in miracles, so we may be happily surprised. Recovering bodies is where we're at right now. The death toll in the Kerrville area is 82. It last time I got to look at it, 27 of them are children. And about 10 children are still missing, which is such a terrible tragedy. So they're going to have to have people on the riverbanks and helicopters going over the water looking for bodies. With the small amount of government air support right now, it's going to take a month. If they were to allow private helicopters to come in and work with them, it could be done in a week. So I'm actually reaching out to people in government that I know to cut the bureaucracy, get us in there, so that we can do what you're seeing on the screen here. And this is a 55-mile long corridor that the Guadalupe River has flooded and drowned people. Up north, where I've been working in the Marble Falls area, I'll share one story with you because the end of the story happened about 2 hours ago. A 17-year-old girl that was washed out of her car with the rest of her family members. They got out, and she unfortunately was washed downstream. Yesterday, I flew the father and the 16-year-old brother. And imagine they're in the back seat of my helicopter, and we're looking for the body of their daughter and sister. I tell you, it was tough holding that together. And you're flying along low and slow, and you're looking as closely as you can. And in one way, you don't want to find her body. And anyway, it was tough. And 2 hours ago, maybe 3 hours ago, they found her body. And so, unfortunately, if stories like that being repeated all over Central Texas right now, it is a terrible, terrible tragedy. And for me, especially with so many children involved.
That is absolutely heart-wrenching. We'll keep that family in our prayers. There are still, as you said, 10 children missing. We will continue to pray for a miracle. But of course, the sooner you get that air support to be looking, the longer time goes on, the shorter the rope gets for that miracle. So we need to get that air support in there. I want to know who specifically in government can make the call to cut through the bureaucratic tape. Who does the public pressure need to be put on, Gary, to help you all out with that?
It's really at a state level. You have the DPS and their helicopters. You have the Parks and Wildlife. And, they have a concern being in the vicinity of private aircraft. But this Operation Hilo that I work with, that's what they do. We've done probably more search and rescue than the government's done. We know how to communicate, coordinate. We share at Ops Center. And again, there's 11 military helicopters working a 55-mile area that's silly. So state reps, state senators, I'm friends with a number of people in the state government. I've been reaching out to them. So if everybody in Texas could contact their people in state government and say, get the private helicopters there. Let's get this done in a week, not a month.
Yeah, everyone who can, contact your representative to try to help Operation Hilo. Get the air support in there to help with, this public-private partnership, if you want to put it that way, so that we can perhaps save some people. We're still praying for miracles, as I just said, but at least complete the recovery effort in a more expeditious manner so these families can get answers and closures and we can move to rebuild. Gary, I'm so impressed with what you all do. I was so thankful when our good friend Michael Yan, who was on earlier, put us in touch. Not only have you helped out in these situations, but I do want to commend you for some of your other efforts. That includes helping out with January 6 prisoners, who many of them just were suddenly released, right? You all helped to organize an Operation Airlift, and you helped to fly dozens of freed J6 prisoners, to their home communities when they came out and they had no resources. I mean, people don't understand what it's like to be let out. And we've talked to a lot of them on this show and on this network right here at Lindell TV. Talk about that. Talk about that situation you helped out with just a little bit before we run out of time.
We knew that the president was very likely to pardon all the J6 prisoners. We just didn't know when. And so I worked with a number of J6 organizations that had what they called ambassadors. And these were people that were going to be at the gates of every prison that evening. And these prisons there were 75 of them spread over 35 states with about 300 prisoners to be released. And many of them, my son, for example, was at Leavenworth. It was 4 below zero. And they were going to let these people out on the street. I actually picked up people that were wearing shorts, and they were in places like Illinois, no phone, no money. And so these ambassadors would be there to make sure they were warm and safe and had a hotel room. And then we got them transportation if they were close. If they were far away, I called friends of mine that have jets like I do, and we created Operation Airlift, and we flew dozens of these prisoners to their homes. I personally, in my aircraft, over 2.5 days, flew 8,500 miles, which is 1/3 around the world, getting them home. And my wife was kind of the flight attendant, and so she was there talking to these almost all men who had been incarcerated, many of them for 4 years. They hadn't seen their children, their wives. she videoed a number of these little children, daddy, and they didn't know who their father was, these victims. And it was an extraordinary experience. I'll be happy to send you some of that video if you like. And do you know that we got hate mail on Facebook? People said, "We hope your plane goes down." It was an amazing experience. These were heroes that were standing up and exercising their right to redress, who were horribly abused by the federal government. Trump, thank God he's there. And by the way, I'm friends with Mike Lindell. Mike has been a force for good across this thing. And so we're winning now.
Yeah. Gary, it's so inspiring to talk with you. Your wife, Diane, Mike Lindell, you exemplify the best of the American spirit and heroism. I would love to share that footage with my audience sometime. In the meantime, let's hope your appeals to government official reaches someone's ears who will help so we can expedite this recovery effort. Thank you so much. And if you saw on the title there, our audience might be scratching their heads, co-founder of Curves. So that is Gary's history. He and his wife co-founded Curves, which many of us ladies know well, that workout chain that you would see everywhere. So you guys are very impressive people. Thank you so much for joining us, because I know you're busy working on this effort. So we really appreciate you taking the time to share this information with our audience, because they can help in putting pressure on the bureaucracy to cut the tape. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you, Emerald.
The president's trip to Texas wasn't the only news that Caroline Leavitt broke in that briefing today in the Brady briefing room. The other news, a little more controversial, related to Epstein. We'll discuss that after this commercial break.
Friends, we all know the truth. Big Pharma and the federal bureaucracy have made a mess of healthcare in this country, and boy, that's an understatement. President Trump signed an executive order to bring prices down, and that's a great step. But we know that real change takes time. There's one pharmacy that is already stepping up. I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're not waiting. They're taking action now with a summer sale that gives you the power to take control of your health. Right now, through the end of June, you get 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. Did you hear that? 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. They work with licensed doctors in all 50 states, and they ship fast straight to your door. Whether it's ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, antibiotics, emergency kits, or your daily prescriptions, this is a time to stock up. If you believe in medical freedom, if you're tired of waiting for someone else to fix things, do what I do. Take action. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell and use promo code Lindell20, Lindell 20, for 20% off your entire order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell, promo code Lindell20. Let's protect our families, defend our freedom, and make America healthy again together.
The DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable, and I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's transparency.
Follow up on that,
Sure.
Caroline. Okay, so the FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. according to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox
I've
News.
got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was
What?
saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars. They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime and locking up violent criminals has led to the arrest of 14,000 violent criminals. That's a 62% increase from the same time period last year. So this Attorney General and the FBI Director are committed to putting bad people behind bars where they belong. That they promised an exhaustive review. That's what they did. For any further details, I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
And the DOJ has now confirmed that Axios reporting as well. In a move that has caught many Trump supporters by surprise, especially those probably who were on social media calling it fake news earlier today, the White House confirmed the Axios reporting, suggesting that no evidence exists that Jeffrey Epstein ran a blackmail operation according to the Trump DOJ and FBI. And Caroline Leavitt taking it even further, stating that the review is, quote, unquote, closed. If that's the case, why did the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, have at least 36 meetings with convicted pedophile blackmailer Jeffrey Epstein from 2013 to 2017? Why did they meet every month in 2016? Are we still trying to figure out who Epstein really worked for? Dr. Michael Scheuer dropped this bomb earlier on The Absolute Truth.
We are no more than the play toy of the Israelis. You want to know why that business about no list of people? It's because these Israelis and the CIA and MI6 were all involved in that adventure on Little St. James Island.
And back not so long ago, the now FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino seemed to also know who Epstein worked for.
About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it, but the short story, but I don't know who they are. It says, you know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean, aces, right? Swore Epstein was either a witting or unwitting intelligence asset, and they may have had his plane wired up, and they're the ones who have all this stuff. So the point is, to sum it up, how do you know some of these countries aren't going to some of these power players who aren't making decisions? Because, hey, you wouldn't want this video out there, right? How do you know?
100%.
I mean,
let's get
How times change when you work for the swamp. So if Epstein's homes were full of video recording devices in every room, which is well documented, as you heard Bongino say back then on Timcast. And he throws parties with famous people and underage girls. And he tells people he's got dirt on famous men, and the FBI covers for him when he gets caught. And now that's the FBI under the leadership of Dan Bongino himself. Where does that leave us? So if you're keeping score, the FBI has the Epstein tapes, because that's been well reported in the past. They have the Anthony Weiner laptop. They also have the Seth Rich laptop. I wouldn't call that transparency. Allison Steinberg joins us now from the White House for much more on this latest news. I mean, I wonder how the people who were out there on social media saying, oh, this has to be fake news, how they feel now with Caroline Leavitt confirming it in the briefing room. Did that seem to be a shock to people in the briefing room? Because I don't think they really I didn't expect that. I guess I didn't expect that just answer from her.
Yeah, it was a bit shocking for me, at least, who was watching and waiting for a transparent answer, right? Because this administration prides themselves on being the most transparent in history, which I guess is true in some regards. They have been, in various other aspects. But with this, no, it's a total bust, and it's a massive letdown to every American citizen, regardless of what end of the political spectrum you're on, by the way. I think we just need transparency here, and we need real answers. We know that there is so much more to this story than is being disclosed. Nothing is adding up here. I mean, Pam Bondi herself said not long ago, what was it, just a matter of a couple of weeks, said she had truckloads of information on her desk, and she was sifting through it all, and that would soon be revealed to the American public. And now it's just crickets, case closed, end of story. There was no list. There was, Epstein just, killed himself, and that's the end of the story, and we're not allowed to ask any further questions. The fact that Caroline Leavitt didn't even entertain any alternative thought on this topic today in the briefing room, I think speaks volumes and is very, again, disappointing to every American who had some hope in this case. We saw the binder stunt with all of the influencers who came to the White House to get the reveal of all of the Epstein information, which was once again another total bust. And then, we thought, oh, maybe we wait a few more months, something big is coming. Nope, just letdown after letdown as far as the Epstein files are concerned. And you really have to wonder, because namely Dan Bongino and even Kash Patel has been very vocal on this topic in many times in the past, as you highlighted on your show moments ago. The fact that they are now covering this up and refusing to even comment on it is very telling. I think we need to continue to put the pressure on and demand answers here, because this is not sufficient.
Well, it's the contradictions, Allison, as you noted. It's what Bondi has said in her official capacity. This is not even when she was out there just talking head on TV. This is her official capacity as the Attorney General of the United States, saying explicitly that the files are on her desk, that there are a truckload, and it's so bad, it's so terrible. And even Caroline Leavitt in the White House briefing room saying, oh, well, that it involves child pornography. It's the contradictions. And it's Alex Acosta, the former labor secretary under the first term, saying that he was told when he was a U.S. attorney that Epstein was an intelligence asset. It's on the campaign trail. All of these people, Kash, Bongino, Trump, saying we need to see the Epstein files. And then it's just such cognitive dissonance. We'll see if President Trump will address it. We're a little bit short on time now, so I do want to get to the next issue, because there's another battle brewing in the Trump administration. This is with the U.S. the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, who has obviously also picked a fight a little bit with the base, who is concerned about some of these agriculture issues. Trump acknowledged that she is the one who suggested that farmers need illegal labor. Correct? Where does that stand today?
Yeah, that is correct. And I wish there was a question that was asked about that in the briefing. Nothing was addressed on that front today. But this is an extremely alarming issue, right up there with the Epstein files. I think this is a massive slap in the face to every American, because as we know, Trump campaigned on mass deportations. How are you going to sit there and make excuses to keep illegal farmers and hotel workers in the country? Mm-hmm. That is unacceptable. This is not what we were promised. So no, this, and he keeps changing his tune on it too, right? He said this a few weeks ago, went back on it, and now he's back again. So what's going on here?
I think that issue will come up. There's a lot going on today. I know you're going to ask questions on this. It's a very important one. We're about to run out of time. I do know that several former Trump administrations officials are pushing Trump to go back again to where the base wants him to be on that. Thank you, Allison Steinberg, for this quick but excellent reporting from the White House. Vanessa Broussard is up next with the Spin Room, and do want to let you know that we are about to hear from President Trump, probably himself in the Oval as he signs executive orders at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we get that, they'll bring it to you. But next is Spin Room with Vanessa Broussard, so stick around.